Hey, y'all, welcome to Cover to Cover. I'm Horse Thief. Yuckmouth and I will be your host today as we create new Storybook Brawl stories with you. Good Luck Games loves giving back, and as always, we are featuring an excellent batch of charities. Yuck, would you like to tell us what we're up to today?
Well, everybody here probably already recognizes the person that's on screen with us, but if you don't, let me introduce the summer champ, Jebas. Jebas, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So I have to ask, you've had time to let this sink in. How does it feel?
It feels great. I mean, there's sort of tertiary benefits to the win outside of just, being the champ and being the thing. Being a gold automatically just from getting first doesn't just cover this year, it carries over into next year too.
That's pretty
so
huge.
That's 10 bonus points, and it should allow me to keep getting those points, because those tragic 1 or 2 point misses into day two shouldn't happen anymore, theoretically.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody, no matter how good you are at the game, you might not qualify for day two, even if you're the best player in the game. This is actually a question that comes up from players that are maybe playing in their first monthly qualifier. What do I expect? Something I always tell people is to go into it with realistic expectations. What would you say to somebody that was maybe going to play in their first monthly qualifier? What should they expect, or what kind of mindset, or what should they do to prepare?
Yeah, I mean, once you're playing in the tournaments, you realize very quickly that it is just such a different game sometimes where, there are still some people that are playing like it's ladder and just trying to high roll or have fun because it is just still the same game. But, there's a lot of really good players that are playing in these, and you're going to find that, you don't really have as much time to sit around and greed, and you're going to run into just very difficult opponents a lot. You can't always get first in every lobby. It's just not realistic. You have to sort of manage your expectations in these events where a top four is a good result. Getting that bottom four really does feel like a loss because of the way that the points are structured. You have to angle at it a lot differently than you do on ladder, where on ladder sometimes getting third or fourth feels like not a great result. But in these tournaments, fourth is a lot more points than fifth. It's a substantial difference.
Yeah. It's really cool. I recall you, I mean, you were just touching on it, but I recall you a few qualifiers back talking about getting into the pro club and how important that was and how it was so rough to have missed it by a little bit. And being gold status that's a huge deal. That's really cool.
Yeah, it should make a pretty dramatic difference on those day twos for sure. I can't imagine that I will miss with 35 points roughly is not a lot with 7 games. I mean, that's barely fifth average. It's like somewhere between fourth and fifth on average, that's really not that bad.
I'm still confident, though, even knowing you have that point buffer to start with, that you're still going to go into it kind of all in and try to get as many points as you can.
Absolutely.
I'm sure nobody's going to be happy if you're in their tournament lobby, but it will help you. It's just a little bit of extra comfort, and you don't have to stress quite as much.
It's a safety net, and it's designed with sort of the way that they approached the pro club. From what I can tell, is that they set it up in such a way that it gives a nice safety net for those that have put in the hours, put in the consistency with the tournaments, so that if they are on the low side of variance, which certainly does happen, that they have a little bit more wiggle room to sort of play with. 10 points, that is the equivalent of an entire first. So that is a lot of extra, cushion just in case you got a couple of eighths in there.
So speaking of putting in the hours, I know you play this game a lot. Also know that you are one to go into practice mode and really test things out. Is that something that you've still been doing? Have you kind of figured out most of the interactions that you need to know? How much time have you and do you spend on that?
I mean, I don't spend a ton of time in the practice mode. I will occasionally pop in there, right before a tournament just to, feel like I'm ready. If I don't feel like I have time to play a normal game, I'll jump into the practice mode and just doing the mechanical actions and practicing for that, I think, is valuable. Making sure that I'm not, kind of rusty or sleepy or whatever, helps a bit there. And it's very difficult to really put in the testing that I need at this point in the practice mode, because the bots are just dead a lot, by the time that you get to the point. Which is one of the reasons that I like SBB 99 so much, because frequently the games will go longer. They will end up being, 20 turns or more. So if you end up hitting, let's say Hatball Fork early on or something similar, you have more turns to play with it to actually get that practice in, which is really nice.
So speaking of SBB 99, I think is last I saw, you had the most super crowns. I don't know if that's still the case, which is pretty impressive. And maybe that translates over into helping you in the tournaments.
It would surprise me if somebody has passed me. I believe I'm at 9 super crowns.
Wow.
Which was quite a few above the person behind me. It's possible that they've caught up quite a bit, but I think I should still be in the lead. I've been getting roughly 1 per week, sometimes 2, but usually about 1. You can't high roll every single game.
Yeah.
I found that 9-9 has given a very interesting training ground, I suppose, because it feels very similar to the practice mode to me, because you can't really see anything that your opponents are doing for the most part. You kind of just are fighting a random person basically every time until very close to the end. There's not a lot of data to be gathered from trackers because they just don't really work with 9-9 very well. So you really are just trying to make the biggest and strongest and best board that you possibly can throughout the course of the game. And if you, do something like Hatball or Slay or whatever, you're just trying to be as strong as you possibly can, because you don't really know much information about your opponents. And you get to, because the games are so long, you get to put yourself in this very interesting position of playing in spots that you will never see in a normal game. Because the game is not long enough for some of these positions to be. And a lot of times, if you get to the true end game, you are going to have treasures and characters that just you'll never need in a normal game to win. You can probably win with Radiant Prism and Ninth Book with just an average board, but that on its own may not win in 9-9. You might have to be bigger than that. You may be in a position where you have this huge Hatball Fork. There was a game that I had where I had Hatball Prism for, 10, 12 turns, and I lost in the finals because my 10,000 Storm King and my 20,000 Shoulder Fairies, because, I had a good Storm King and an evil one, that just wasn't big enough to beat Matnas, in fact, with Mimic, Ninth Book, and Radiant Prism, and he just had a bunch of tokens that just pigged my whole board, and then just stats didn't matter.
I really kind of like. I get the sense that I like the mindset you're describing here for SBB 99, because I just go in going, how do I either get Hatball Fork as fast as possible, or how do I get a line on a bunch of level 7 treasures so that I can Radiant Prism round table, XYZ, throw something else in. And if I'm not on the right path to it, I'm like, well, this game's a wash because I don't have a line to first, really. And I just kind of diminish the 99 game and go, okay, let's move on to the next one, and maybe I'll high roll there. Whereas what you're describing, and probably a reason you're getting so many more super crowns than me, is you are just building a strong board and treating it as a playground and a way to encounter situations that you rarely get to encounter in a ladder game. Because a lot of ladder games, you don't encounter that many situations. The builds don't go that late. You don't get that strong. You're over here.
A high roll in an 8-player game, it looks very different than a high roll in a 9-9 game, right?
Yeah.
Because in an 8-player game, you might have a high roll where you just got a tier 5 treasure early, knocked out a bunch of people, and then got some tier 6s, and then the lobby is essentially dead by the time you get to the end. But that doesn't really do it in 9-9. There's too many people for you to be you can't be the lobby bully when there's that many people.
Yeah, it's insulated by the number of players.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what I found is that in a normal 8-player lobby, you might hit something like round table with trees, and you basically know that you're probably going to win from there, right? You probably at that point have enough information on your opponents, and you can just kind of, just cruise to the end. SBB 99 doesn't matter what you have. You still need to look to improve it
Yeah.
every turn. And as you're mentioning, it's not something you're always forced to try to do. Be in the mindset of, I have this fully complete board. How can I make it even better?
Yeah, I've had a few games that I ended up winning, getting the Super Crown in, where, I was Hatball Fork, Hatball Wand, or whatever, and you get to the point where you're at the super end game, and, I had an opponent that was Mirror Mirror with, double Medusa, double Apple Tree, and a bunch of pumpkins in the back. Big stats doesn't necessarily beat that. But I was on pants, so what do? You have to have a tech unit like Doom Breath. That would normally be the way that you sort of attack that. But I can't just buy one, so, you have to spend energy and effort thinking about, how do I fix this problem, which is I can't buy this unit, I have to find one. So then that involves getting tier 6 unit that is probably good or good aligned so that then you can shard it into a dragon eventually, and trying to angle towards that, which I did and worked. I ended up, with like a 600 Doom Breath that just like dumped on their back row because that's how Doom Breath is. But, you have to be aware of some situations like that and how do you tech against spots. Because while you don't have a ton of information to work with throughout the middle part of the game and through the early part, once you're in the finals, sometimes it can be 2 people that are 30 health and you might have to fight them 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
If they have a better ability to tech than you do, you probably won't win. If you had a big dragon and they find a soul tack, or, in this case, they had a board that was pretty vulnerable to back row disruption, and I got some, that's a way that you can win that is something necessary to be able to be aware of that you just may not need to encounter. You don't need a 600 Doom Breath in an 8-player game. It's just not necessary.
No.
Most of the time.
But in a game where you might be bumping into 20k HP Echo Woods.
Exactly. It's something that you may have to just be aware of, and just having that, how do I super high roll, that sort of information available to you just improves your ability to do it intuitively rather than having to think about it, because your time in your turns is pretty short most of the time. So not having to spend that energy thinking about how to do it and just being able to do it, that makes a big difference in higher pressure situations when you need to make those calls.
So I see that you like going into the mindset of doing, these really strong plays, but let's circle back a little bit to the summer champs. When you're going into the summer champs and you're in 8-player lobbies of amazing players, there are no easy matchups. What's the strategy heading into the tournament before anything has started, just leading into it? What's the game plan going into it?
So, the game plan, just like it is for any tournament, is to try not to bottom 4 as much as possible. That is a good first start because there's a big points jump between 4 and 5. There's 2 additional points, which you go from getting 4 to 6, it's a 50% point increase for just a single placement. Obviously, getting first is great, but anything in the top half, so that 1st through 4th, is a good result a lot of the time in these tougher lobbies. Because if you have a pretty good average that's above 4th, you don't necessarily need to get first at all day. If you look at, I believe it was Cobalt Wolf, didn't have a first on the day at all, just had a bunch of seconds and thirds, and then an 8th or whatever, and they were still able to make top 8 just fine. So you don't need firsts all day to get there. And the same is true when you're actually in the top 8.
Here's where I actually kind of want to, since it kind of works out this way, let's pose you a question, a little bit of a Storybook Brawl pop quiz, and curious to see chat's involvement. What do you think the normal number of turns is before the first player gets knocked out in the top 8? So I've got a bunch of information about the 5 games you played in the top 8 on day 2. What do you think? What do you think's the first turn each game? You can do it on average or just the turn itself, that the first player gets knocked out in one of these games.
Average number of turns the first person. Oh, in the actual top 8 of the champs.
Yeah, in the top 8 of the champs. Any guesses in chat too? I'm curious.
I would guess 8. It's like 7 or 8. It's probably somewhere in there.
So we got Swift Wolf guessing a 4.2. Turn 9 from Static Sheep. We got some 5s, some 4s. People think on... Oh, 4... Oh, you're saying 4.1. So I'm saying, yeah, numerically. So what is 2-0, 2-1, 2-2, 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, 4-0, 4-1, 4-2. So 5-0 is turn 10 of the game, and 4-2 is turn 9 of the game?
Yeah.
So the average is 9.6 throughout these 5 games, but it was turn 9, turn 9, turn 10, turn 10, turn 10. The first 2 games, someone got knocked out in turn 9 of the game, which would apparently be 4.2.
Like 5.0 for 4.2, yeah, 4.2, 5.0, somewhere right around there. It's a crappy place to get bumped out to. Feels bad because you really don't have anything going on, and you just don't feel like you had any. You feel like you weren't even participating.
All right, I'm gonna popcorn a second one out there. We got a couple of game related ones that I collected here. Throughout the 5 Summer Champ top 8 games, what do you think was the average amount of health that Jebas specifically had remaining at turn 5? Turn 5 would be, what do we say, 2-0, 2-1, 2-2, 3-0, 3-1. At turn 3 level 3.1 natural.
3-1, my average health is usually about 27.
27.
It's like 25 to 27, I would say, somewhere in there.
I'm curious what other people's guesses were here. 22, 24, on 3.1. On 3.1. You do take some hits by 3.1, but you take small hits throughout level 2 usually. People start having upgraded things later on 2.
Some people take small hits. Me, I take 4 or 5 damage every turn. I don't know.
This can also be very dependent on what hero you're playing.
Oh, true.
As we all know.
On the APOC, I probably had a little bit more health, probably plus 5 health or so.
So your overall average, Static Sheep is the perfect Price is Right guess right here. 32.8.
Jesus.
32.8 you had at turn 5 on average, those 5 games. Lowest was 28. You had that twice, actually. You went into 3.2 with 28 HP left.
Imagine having HP.
That's not bad.
It's a resource.
But as Jebas pointed out, a couple of those games, right, were APOC, where you start with extra health.
That's true.
So that number is a tiny bit deceiving.
Well, I mean, so these are stats, they're real. Are they important? No. Maybe? No, not at all. Not at all. Okay,
all right, hit us with another
one more question. Last one for this batch. On turn 10, what was your average health? So we said that was 5.20, 21, 22.
Turn 10 is 5-0.
Turn 10's 5-0? Okay.
13 is 6-0, yeah.
So at turn 10, throughout your 5 games.
Turn 10 on 5-0, throughout the 5 games. So knowing that I did not have an amazing result on all of them, I would say like 15.
Let's see, we got a 12, a 22, a 17, a 16. You were very, very close, Jebas, but Adam is dead on. Somehow, those 5 games averaged out to exactly 16.
Wow.
On turn 10, you had about 16 health to work with. On 5-0? Wow.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll have a few more pop quizzes, but I got some stuff here.
I like it.
Yeah, there are some fun ones that I'm looking forward to. We'll come back around to those. For now, I want to circle back. So we talked about your strategy heading into the tournament. So then the tournament starts, and Rally wins the first 2 lobbies. How did that change things for you and the other players involved?
In like the 3rd game, I tried. I missed by just a very small amount of HP, but I kept that in mind to see if we could get them a bottom 4, because any bottom 4 finish means that they're just not live for the 4th lobby. You still have to play for as many points as possible, because the only way that you're going to be able to compete with them is you have to get live yourself at that point. I mean, you can always just get first in every single lobby for the rest of the game, and then it doesn't matter who else is live, but that's pretty unlikely. So I would say really the only thing that changed is that I had to keep in mind where they were at, and they ended up getting 4th, and I think I took 5th, and I think we died in the same turn. So I was just a little bit of HP short of being able to keep them off of that, being live in the 4th lobby. But outside of that, really not a whole lot changes, because each game is kind of independent of itself outside of that.
So as we're talking about how your game plan can change based off of what another player is doing and what their point status is and your own point status, I happen to know that you're a big fan of the race format. Why do you think the race format is so great? Because I'm also a huge fan.
I I really think that being able to play the game a little bit differently in different spots it can be really exciting, right? You can approach sort of the first game, like the first one or two games, very differently than you have to approach maybe one towards the middle when you know that you need, exactly a certain number to get there. I mean, you can play a little bit greedier early on when you have more games to play around with. It's sort of angling for those first to get a huge lead on points, or you know, later on once you're closer to the amount, maybe you're at 20 points, you only need 5. You can accept, a more middling hero with just more of a tempo start to just get fourth, and that's fine because now you're live in the final one. And then once you're live, you play for the maximum greed possible. Anything other than first is useless. So you are just trying to win, and that changes the game too. It feels really dynamic.
It's funny you say that because it was game two of the tournament, and you got, what'd you end up? You ended up taking Gwen, and you were in the first turn of that game, and after you did all your decisions, you said, we're going to need a total of 25 before we absolutely have to spike a lobby, because that'll allow us to win. That being said, I would prefer to spike now, because then if we get a third or better, it will allow us to be live already. And then if we get a really sick game, we can just finish it out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of, I don't need it right now, but it would be nice to just be done, have that position so that, you have a little bit less stress if you're way ahead on points. Obviously, Raleigh ended up being in that position where they had a ton of points and then just needed to spike a lobby after the third game. But, that was the position we were trying to set ourselves up in if we could have.
Let me take this moment to say hello and thank you to Friendly Phoenix, who just gifted some subs. Appreciate that. So we've talked about, a lot of different things going into the tournament. One thing that I don't feel like gets talked about very often, I've had firsthand experience with this. You finished second, fourth, fifth, third, and first. So you didn't have the worst experience with this, what I'm going to ask. But what's the mindset when you get knocked out and then you're stuck waiting for the next tournament or the next round, to start for that lobby to finish? I feel like it can be quite tough, and it's certainly a mental challenge. Do you feel like you end up reflecting on the prior game? Are you looking ahead to the next game? What are you doing in that amount of time in between?
So it sort of depends on when you get knocked out. If it's a quick eighth, sometimes I'll have enough time to review the game and see sort of where we maybe had some mistakes that could have been improved upon. Sometimes it's just stepping away and, taking a bathroom break, eating some extra water. During the day one, I actually walked the dog after one of the bad games. And, you sort of step away from it and are able to get time to refocus yourself a little bit and just come back with more of a fresh mindset. Once upon a time, maybe I would have just sat and stewed and lamented that I was really unlucky, or that, there's nothing that I can do about it. And, I've been taking steps to sort of improve that mindset and change it, because each game is independent. Everybody's a really good player. You're not guaranteed again to win every single lobby. So sort of changing the mindset and just having a little bit more fun. Day one, game 4, I just came back and I'm like, you know what? Didn't have a great start. We're just going to have fun with it. Whatever the rest of the outcome is, it is. We need first anyway, so we may as well try to do the strategy that I normally would like to do, which is, play greedy, play for hat ball, play for, the biggest, most content-filled thing we could, and it ended up working out.
I think there's a lot of experience reflected in your answer there, because I show up to these qualifiers and I do my best, to make it on to day 2 and to make it beyond. And I've struggled so far. And I've noticed over time, because Yuck, earlier you were mentioning, we've got another qualifier coming up this coming weekend. If you hit 4K, anybody out there, anybody who hit 4K, y'all can go in. You can go join in the next qualifier coming up Saturday the 30th. Friday the 29th, I believe. Day 1's on Friday and Saturday. But it's very easy for me to get very frustrated, especially several qualifiers prior when I didn't do very well. And I've noticed that qualifier to qualifier to qualifier, my approach and my mindset, my reaction to poor results has changed ever so slightly. I think you really kind of got to bake that in too. You have to have some of that resiliency. So going out and walking the dog sounds like a phenomenal, just one thing that you can do to break the energy and think a little bit more clearly, because ultimately you can't really drag last game into the next one.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of conversations with the competitive Discord, so talking with peers, right, about this, where it's not that those games can't have reflection, but tournament day is probably not the right day. Tournament time, put it in the bank. All my games are recorded, so then we can always go back and review them. Like, they definitely deserve review if they're really bad, because you have to figure out like what it is that, like, you got eighth. Eighth is not ideal in a tournament. It's worth 1 point out of a potential for 10. It's pretty bad. So figuring out what you did that maybe could have contributed to you getting eighth, so that you can just maybe not do that next time or improve on that for next time, it's definitely something that you can do later.
Yeah, that's a great answer and some great feedback from you as well, Horse. I am a player that I don't feel like I get tilted very easily. But let's be honest, in these situations, especially in a tournament, you're emotionally involved. It's very easy to, be influenced by some results and get caught up too much in the moment. So I think that's great feedback and something that players that aren't as versed in these tournaments, that they can use for themselves. So really good response there.
I don't know why, but I'm half tempted. I'm half tempted to take a quick stats that I collected, but are they important kind of break?
No, let's go.
All right, let's get into a batch of, let's just do 2 right now. Jebas, I'm curious, and chat, please let me know. On average, across these 5 games, how many times did you roll per game, including free rolls? On average.
On average, well, I know that I had at least one game where I was playing Aeon Ball, and you usually roll a lot more than 2. I would say 30 on average.
I'm curious if
this is a tough one.
This I had no barometer for this before writing all of this down. I'm curious if chat's got. So you said 30?
I said 30, but that might be a little conservative.
You got sheep coming in with a 50.
I do like to waste a lot of gold rolling. What if the next shop has the thing that I want in it?
It's true. Like, why settle? Never.
It's like a gotcha machine every single time I click that button. I only have to pay 1 gold. It's not even that expensive.
I like how you say waste. It's interesting to me.
All right, we got a handful of guesses in chat. A couple of you are going to be close Price is Right rule style again, of course. 47.6 rolls per game on average out of the 5.
That's so much gold.
One of the games, not your Aeon Ball game, you rolled 71 times.
Wow.
Your Aeon Ball game, you rolled 60. The very first game, somehow you rolled 71 times.
Jeez.
But I think you might have played a couple of free rolls.
I did get second that game too. So once you're on tier 6, if you only have a very select few things, because that game went pretty long, there were only a couple of things that I could have gotten that were going to improve my board too. So, you end up rolling a lot more. That makes sense.
Well, and so also then, how many average turns do you think you played per game, all 5 games? Since you're talking about it.
Average turns was probably like 14. Nah, it's less than that. It's probably like 12 or 13, because I didn't win in all of them.
Any chat predicts here?
Somewhere between there.
It's a good guess.
Because the average game itself is like 18 turns. It's like 16 to 18, I think.
Ooh, so okay? We have some pretty good guesses in chat here too. All right, so 15.6.
That makes sense.
Your very
it was
first game was 18. The second place, and so that I guess helps to explain why so many rolls. Although your Aeon Ball game was a 17-turn game as well.
Interesting.
We have a little bit more to talk about, and then here in just a little bit, we're going to do a game review with Jebas for the final game. If you haven't already seen it, please stick around. You definitely want to watch that with us while we talk to Jebas about what he was thinking and everything we can grab out of Jebas's mind about that game. But for now, I want to ask, we can pretty much all agree that lobbies on ladder and lobbies in competitive play, whether it be scrims or in a tournament, are quite different. Do you have one that you prefer or that you think you're better at, or do you just think you're really good at adapting and adjusting your playstyle?
So there have been times where I've scrimmed a lot and then tried to adjust my playstyle to it, and I did not always have the best results with that. So more recently, I've kind of, and SPB 99 has helped a bit with this, is I just sort of play the game that I want to play, which a lot of times ends up being half ball if I could, obviously. But, I'm just playing towards the lines that I enjoy, that I find to be more fun. And that's been working out for me. So I don't really play them that differently, though I do keep in mind, like, the end result being a little bit different, like the requirements that I need to feel like I quote unquote won a game is a bit different, right? So a win in tournament play is a lot of times like top 4, whereas on the ladder, if I get third, I probably lose MMR. So your goal ends up being a little bit different, but kind of the way that you approach the game as far as to start, I think, is for me pretty similar.
There's an old
there are
saying.
concessions in some spots, though.
Well, there's an old saying: "Begin with the end in mind." And the way you're approaching this sounds very smart, very, very good for mindset and just strategy overall in general. I do wonder, something came to mind. I wondered if you brought any meta-specific strategies with you into this tournament.
One thing that I, that in general is something to be aware of is competitive players will buy a lot more soul tax than people playing on the ladder, to protect whatever their strategy happens to be, protect their back row. So things like dragons are kind of a double-edged sword, because if they don't have the soul tech, your dragons are really good. But if they do, like, your lightning dragon can be pretty bad. But being aware that sort of that strategy will happen, like, people will have that a lot more. People will have a lot more Medusas and more tech units on, in the competitive space than you'll find on a lot of the ladder games, just because not everybody's always playing super greedy. And sometimes it's just weighing, like, if they have it or if they don't have it, like, how disastrous is that for me? And can I play the line where I just pretend that they don't have that, and then, is that better for me? Because if they don't, like, the upside may be so high that I just got to take that risk. And sometimes you got to position yourself for that too.
I like that. For some reason, like, the first thing that came to mind for me, of course, was Queen of Hearts right now, if you're going to talk about the current patch that we're in, and you played several Queens of Hearts throughout the course of this, and I noticed yesterday in the beta branch they announced that they're playing with Queen of Hearts going down to a base 1-1, which seems good. Get scammed off by falling stars, might make it a little bit riskier to play, but I like that you've got, of course, with all your screaming experience, even a level beyond this is the thing that's getting most spam, because we've gone from metas of, you see a happy little tree wizard's familiar on turn 1, you buy it. You see Snow White show up on turn 3.0, you buy it. Now you kind of build into Queen of Hearts. But I noticed you did... No, you bought Feasting. I don't recall if you played a lot of Lightning Dragon. I don't think you did you? You played like one Feaster because it had some stats.
I would play Lightning Dragon if... So for me, like, that Lightning Dragon with Mermaid plan is like a non-starter in these competitive situations. I sort of went into this knowing that I wasn't planning on playing a lot of Slay, because I hadn't had a lot of good success with it in the scrims. Even when I had all the treasures for it, it just fell flat sometimes, because, you just have tougher opponents. If you miss Slay for a couple of turns, you sort of fall off. But for me, Lightning Dragon with like a Lady of the Lake or a Helm is great. But if you don't have that, I don't a lot of times think it's super necessary. I think it's okay, but it's sort of just a unit that doesn't fit the plan a lot of times. But if you actually have some way to give it health and have it attack maybe twice, then it's a really big powerhouse through the mid game for sure.
All right, Horse, how about you hit us with another stat or two? Maybe some fun ones here. They're all fun, but there are a couple that I'm really excited for. And then I'm super anxious to get into this video review, if we can get into that hopefully here shortly.
Yeah, let's stat and then segue. Let's flip over to a category that I have called treasure. So, Jebas, if you had to guess, What was your average treasure level for the treasures that you had at the end of each game?
3. Probably like 3-5.
I'm curious what chat would think. This is a Summer Champs victory run. These 5 games represent the winning run. So what average level treasures, right? It's got to be we got to be seeing things like Black Prism Mimic every single game, right? 7.
I mean, we do have, the last game I ran through a whole bunch of 6s.
Yeah.
And some 7s, so that maybe throws off the number a little bit.
Spoiler though, that was only the last game. Okay, average turns out to be 3.86. You were just close to 4. You were almost there, but yeah, no.
I think the last game ups the number just a little bit.
These games, they go so much faster than a ladder game, and you just don't have the luxury to be selecting 5, 6 different level 6 and 7 treasures throughout the course of them most of the time. And then, of course, you like Hatball.
I do.
All right, let's go. What do you think was your most picked treasure? Not the one that you necessarily kept for the entire game, but out of all the treasures you picked, which one did you pick the most times? I'm curious what chat thinks you grabbed most.
This is a tough one, right? Like, even if you played these games, I feel like that would be hard to recall. So I don't even know if Jebas has an advantage on this one.
Let's see. Most picked treasure. So it's probably a tier 2, I would guess, or a tier 3. I know that I had Fancy Pants at least once. I'm guessing it's probably like Fairy Tale or something along those lines.
I'm seeing a Fancy Pants guess in chat. Oh wait, someone thinks Crystal Ball.
I know it's not ball, because I know that I didn't get a lot of ball games during the actual thing. It could be like Sling or something too, yeah.
So, you only had it 3 times, but there was only one treasure that you selected 3 times. Everything else you had fewer than 3. And that treasure was Potion Master's Cookbook.
Actually, I thought that. I was like,
that's a great one.
Cookbook would be really good if I had that a bunch of times. I wonder if I took that. And yeah.
No big surprise.
I think it's really strong.
It's a good treasure. It's appealing.
I mean, Cookbook and Fancy Pants to me are very similar. Like they have sort of the same kind of like, let's pile some extra stats on.
Yeah, the thing about Cookbook too, I feel like if you see it early in the game, you want it. And if you see it late in the game, there are still some situations when you still want it. So there are some other level 2 treasures that you might also want later in the game, like Hermes Boots, for instance. But that is one of those that falls into the category of there could be any stage of the game where it makes sense to take it. So that one kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it has a lot more longevity, more different spots in the game where, +1/+1 to your good characters maybe doesn't have that sort of staying power. Being able to target buff stuff is usually still pretty good.
Yeah. All right, I got 2 more treasures for you. These stats, they're real. Are they important? No. What was the treasure that you were offered the most often? I looked at every single treasure you were offered throughout the course of this thing. Which single treasure were you offered 5 times? Doesn't mean you took it. Just your most offered treasure. Reduplicator. I want to see some chat guesses here too. I'm curious.
Well, it's interesting. So if you think it's Reduplicator, then you think
would have been a lot of 4s, right? It's not Reduplicator. That's a bit more of a joke, but I do get offered Reduplicator an awful lot. I mean, it's probably a 2, like a 2 or a 3, because I tripled stuff. And if it's something that I didn't take, it's probably like daggers. Hang on. I gotta bring up the treasures because I'm just like too much of a boomer.
These questions are tough, but yeah, I think the key here is to figure out
it's
what
Monster
level.
Manual.
I mean, how could you possibly not know the answer to this right off the top of your head?
Yeah, I know, right? It could have been Piggy Bank too. It's probably a 2, and it's probably one that like is really, really narrow, like Corrupted Heartwood maybe, or like Book of Heroes. I'm just trying to think of a treasure that I would see and be like, yeah, I really don't have a spot for this in my life.
I'm willing to give you a hint. You have actually said it.
I believe that.
Oh, nice.
In the list of treasures that you just said.
I bet it's probably Corrupted Heartwood then.
It was Monster Manual.
Oh, Monster Manual. Yeah, that was the first one that I was like, ooh, I bet it's Monster Manual. Once I looked up the list.
You got offered that thing 5 times.
That a lot. Yeah. And there are spots where Monster Manual's good. We weren't really in a position for it in any of those games.
Especially
sometimes you got a bunch of friendly spirits and you're like, seen worse.
After you lose an egg, maybe Monster Manual.
Yeah.
No foreshadowing. No foreshadowing. We'll get
maybe the slow scaling is not where we need to be.
All right, one last treasure-related question, and this one's a tie. What was your most common treasure on your final board? You had 2 different treasures twice on your final board at the end of the game.
One of them I think was Hat. So I think I had Hat a couple of times, and that usually sticks around pretty late. It's an interesting question. So I can't imagine that it's a tier 6 or 7.
It's such a weird thing to think about.
This is a weird thing to think about.
This was a weird process to go through, but it tickled me.
I mean, it could be Potion Master's Cookbook because I had it a couple of times.
Which 2 you think
Forking
you're going
Rod's
with?
a pretty good guess too. I did have Forking Rod a few times that I usually like to take pretty high. I could see that as a pretty good list. Something in there somewhere. Yeah.
You got 2 that you're gonna. What are you gonna lock it in?
Yeah, I think we'll lock it in. I think we're gonna go with Fork and we'll go with Fork and Hat.
It was Fork and Cookbook.
Good guesses though.
You had
so close.
On 2 of your final boards, you had Fork, and on 2 of your final boards, you had Cookbook.
Am I supposed
trying to hat ball? You know.
I was gonna say, am I supposed to put on my shocked face that these are
Yeah, I
spell
know, right?
treasures?
Oh, let's name some spell treasures and see if we can get 2 of them.
All right. Well, y'all wanna?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
I do think that Fork, even outside of being a strong spell treasure, I think that is one of the most powerful treasures in the game. Like, unironically, I think it's like Fork Masquerade Ball is one of the strongest things that you can do in the mid game by like a pretty decent margin.
Well, there's a reason that we've seen some of the duplicator, the multiplicative effects tweaked here and there throughout the course of Storybook Brawl because they're very strong. And Forking Rod multiplying cheap spells, and if you can discount them, of course, like just with an Aeon, and of course with your know-how to do mage things, there are ways that you're going to find cheaper spells that are actually really good spells too, so it makes sense.
I'm sure that I've bought Aeon in my life a bit more than the average player. We'll leave it at that.
All right, well, let's flip over to the game. Y'all ready to take a look? Now we would like to go through the last game of the winning run. That game is just too fun, so I'm gonna flip us over here.
Yeah, I'm excited for this.
Y'all ready for this? Let's go. So starting off here, right off the bat, this is your hero.
Not
select.
ideal. Not an ideal hero select. We're looking. Last game we need to spike a first. We're thinking Waddle. Piper, Zelhua would probably be pretty good in this position. Horde Dragon. Something that is generally regarded as a little bit higher power.
So right before you saw these, you said, hopefully we can get a little bit better of a hero selection. And then you saw them and said, these are not really it.
Yeah.
Then you went on to say,
right.
These are not exactly what I was hoping to see here. If we're looking to win, I think it's probably this. You pointed at Apocalypse or Sadrak. I think I'm going to take APOC and see if we can make it work.
There is a decent chunk of people, I think, who would say Pan's Shadow is pretty good here because Pan Shadow does have a decent amount of first equity if you can get to, but I don't have enough reps on it to really feel comfortable with it. And I think that if you hit APOC right, you're going to get first a lot more so than you will with, the Pan Shadow.
I'm just now noticing this because I use the same tracker. I'm staring at that number of matches won, average place 7. Does that get in your head at all?
I don't even think about it anymore.
Okay.
Several tournaments ago, I would use these numbers a lot more, but I sort of realized that the data that it's collecting is a small sample size, and B, it's really more for ladder. Like anything can happen on ladder. You can just miss wide and get bad stats for a couple of games in a row, and then just never play them again for that whole patch, and they just leave it like that. So I don't even really think about it too much.
So I'm going to let this run a little bit. This is your opening APOC shop. It's all right.
It's okay.
It's not great.
So I find that on APOC, I just really want to protect my health early. It kind of goes without saying, right? You want to protect your health. You want to find experience. You're not looking as much for the things that scale, which, Jebas, I know how much you like building boards that scale. So is this very different for this game? I know you had another APOC game, but are you approaching this one differently, knowing you need first?
Not necessarily. You still just try to play whatever your strongest board is, and sometimes that is a scaling board, even if it's a bit awkward. Ideally, I don't want to try and find something like creeper scaling because that, doesn't necessarily build into anything. But dwarves are fine on this. You can do court wizard stuff and just like invest a little bit of resources into court wizard, and that's usually okay. Just something that's pretty strong, vulture, but then falls off, where you just don't care if it falls off because you're just going to get a brand new board.
We also saw that you cycled the chicken that turn. There may or may not be a question later about how many chickens you bought throughout
That is a lot.
your run. So keep an eye on that, maybe.
Well, and the other thing you were
Okay.
saying at this moment too was, I'm going to take lines that ideally save us HP.
Yeah, and I do think that locking for the Genie's Wish is pretty valuable here. I mean, it doesn't always hit, but there is a percentage of the time that for 1 gold you get a pretty decent payoff, which is shrink or another unit or whatever.
So
Yeah, I like it.
on level 2, I'm curious, do you find yourself buying certain things? For instance, I notice I'm buying a lot of Mim and Black Cat if I can get my hands on it these days. Were there specific things you were looking for as you were early in these games?
I mean, Mim is one of the strongest tier 2s by a lot. It's probably the strongest tier 2 on its own, because I'm fine picking up Mims on tier 3, tier 4 sometimes. Getting that extra attack, especially early, makes your units go a long way. Black Cat is a way of sort of setting yourself up for a decent tier 3 shop. Queen of Hearts. Yeah, if I could see those, great. But you have so little gold early on that you're just kind of trying to make it work with whatever you've got.
I can't help but see the irony as you ask that question, what are you looking for, as Jebas is seeing and buying an egg.
Mm-hmm. This...
I mean, if we're trying to save health, egg typically is a way of doing that.
This fight, we have to, oh my god. You can see it in your face. Oh.
Yeah, that's a great shot there.
We know we have future vision here. This has got to be arguably one of the most terrible starts to a game you could possibly have.
It's not ideal.
What at this moment you said, well, that's not good. Now we have to hit, and we didn't. That's really bad.
Losing the egg, we're still at 45 health, which is a lot. Especially on APOC, you have a little bit more breathing room than most heroes, but yeah, it's still not a great position to be in, I think.
Let me flip it back. I want to see this opening shop since you went so quickly with that free roll. You're looking at, right here you're saying now we have
Not
to hit,
much.
and you're looking at a Lonely Prince. You can't, this isn't.
I mean, one way that you can hit is you flip the prince into a frog. 5/5 is very, very strong. This is not it.
Yeah. But this speaks back to the way you have to keep you got to keep your mindsets somewhat optimistic, somewhat flexible, somewhat you have to have almost a forgetful nature about the things that didn't go right, because you're just in the spot. This is the moment you're in, and you have to make the most of it. And here you are staring at this eggless 2-1-1-1-1-1-1 board. The cat makes another one.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to come up with, what is my plan for next turn and the turn after. So I have this unflipped frog. Well, Queen of Hearts is a royal now, so if I buy this Black Cat, I can buy Queen of Hearts if we hit one in the shop, and it flips the frog and is good with the Black Cat. So it's, not a great plan, but it is a plan.
Yeah, that's great recognition that it helps you in both ways with the Black Cat as well as the Frog Prince. You're losing this fight going into it. You're hoping not to take.
We knew that way ahead of time too. This combat was a disaster, right?
You're
we
just
could have
so
saved
far
some
behind.
health. But we're at 38, which is, manageable, right?
Yeah.
Not awesome, but I've been at lower life coming into these turns for sure. Because that would be 33 without the bonus health. That's still not even the worst game that we had.
No, it's not. I have the numbers on that.
This was a pretty good shop, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Candy Rain is really good to hit on the 3.0 turn, because you're typically not able to purchase a spell here anyway. And then if you're buying two things, getting +1/+1 on each of those is quite nice, especially if it's something like a Brave Princess, which the extra stats have added meaning behind it.
Yeah, like we needed a royal pretty badly. I probably would have even bought like a Romeo or something here if we didn't hit Brave Princess, because we needed one to flip the frog. Like that's such a huge amount of stats, and I ended up opting rather than buying a 2-drop and just using the spell to buy more stats on this Black Cat and just pick up the support, because it sets us up to be able to grab another evil next turn, makes it a little bit bigger. Like the Black Cat is a lot larger here. And then, now we have 2/3s that are a little bit larger as well. So
yeah, I like what you
rather
did in
than
the
just
spot
having a
lot.
2/2 cat.
The 2/1 sure shot really wasn't going to be doing a whole lot of work here. All of a sudden you multiply that support's effect across both. Yeah, it's just what you did here. You got a lot more numbers on the board all in one go. Even flipping the frog and getting the Candy Rain on the Frog Prince is kind of cool because it transforms that turn. Why not?
Yep. I think Candy Rain should, like, if I had Candy Rain in all of my tier 3 shops, I would probably be happy with it. It's just such a powerful spell early on.
Okay, so classic experience. Brave Princess, not even a shot to attack, let alone slay. We can see your reaction here. Not amazing.
Not ideal. Again,
This is turn 4, right? This is the combat at the end of 3.0, turn 4 of the game.
Yep.
And nothing has gone swimmingly. Now, the 3.0 shop was okay. That wasn't bad.
3.0 shop was okay, but outside of that, it's been a bit of a disaster, But this is a great shop. Like, this is exactly what we need to sort of stabilize ourselves in this game.
Yeah, this shop is amazing, and it's interesting. It's amazing not only because of the Queen of Hearts, but I think this shop would be amazing just simply with the Queen of Hearts. It's that strong right now, and you do already have the Black Cat set up for
the
it.
Mim is actually also quite useful here, because it makes the Brave Princess have a better position with now this Queen of Hearts lineup.
Yep, and a pretty decent spell to round out the amount of gold that you're looking to spend here. So really great shop.
Gives us a little bit more stats, which is something that is necessary for us to just stop bleeding. At this point, we're in damage control, right? Because we lost that egg, so we're just bleeding health. And there's not much that we're going to be able to do about it.
Yeah, you took 7 damage turn 3, the turn after you lost the egg. You took 7 damage the prior turn. You gotta stop taking 7 damages here.
So how are you feeling right now as far as your chances of winning this lobby? Be honest.
It's not looking great, but we're APOC and anything can really happen. I mean, you can randomly hit a wish into 2 EXP or whatever and just spike all the way up to 6 and stabilize from there. So you never really know.
Now you face the army of sheep. And you get both peeps right off the bat here.
Yeah, hitting both peeps helps a lot. They have a lot of supports in the back, which means they're quite strong. But the Queen, we had some really good combat RNG through these couple of turns, the next few, that helped us stabilize, basically. The fact that we didn't get shot by the back row unit multiple times made a huge difference.
When the Queen was finally able to go, it hit the next one up, which was not ranged, and then the next thing up was also not ranged, which meant it had to hit in, and then that meant, and also your Mim gets popped at the right timing in the end of that last fight, so that, like, one of the melees doesn't hit the Mim and then not hit the Queen, and then the Queen hits it, and the sure shot's shooting 2-3 times while that's all happening.
And I remember that happening a couple times where we would attack the slot 7 unit rather than, slot 5 or whatever, so then it ends up attacking in, and then we get to attack into the ranged. And that happened a couple of times throughout the next few combats, too.
It's also pretty decent for you that your last opponent, the Snow Angel, played experience against you. They spent 4 gold buying experience instead of that 4 gold that could have been spent upgrading their board, and it ended up being a pretty close fight. So these little things really add up over the course of a game, especially on APOC. That damage really matters.
So here you are. That Queen looks pretty obvious, but the one thing I'm noting is this is the first time this entire game that I'm looking at this going, maybe we can actually spend a gold on a roll. Like, maybe with this shop.
Yeah, I mean, there's even the line where you take the Vampire here, because it is evil. It makes the board a little bit stronger. But, realistically, on 3.2, that's not where I want to be. It's not terrible, but I think we can do better. And we have to hit to do a little bit better, so.
It's just the whole entire game, it's felt like your back's been up against a wall, and this was the first time, and oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the play right there. That's the one. If you didn't see it when it happened, let me introduce you to this play, which is obviously just huge.
Let's just go back a moment and watch that one more time. So we get the queen, we roll. And this is, I mean, we've all hoped for the mix, but you don't always hit the mix. But I mean, also, hitting your frog prince, that's a 6/6. That's a pretty big chunk of stats that you just possibly turned into a time fly, or not a time fly, but there are plenty of.
Could have turned into a doubly, you know, been a 2/2 or whatever. I mean, so the way that I'm figuring it is we lost our egg, right? So we are really quite behind in this game. By hitting this Mix-a-Whizzle, you know, you're right. Some of the time it doesn't hit. Could have turned into a Vampire, could have turned into an Evil. It would have been whatever, fine. But because we did hit the thing, the actual payoff here, now we're basically at parity for where we should have been if we didn't lose our egg, essentially. Like we've caught back up now with this line, and now we're just playing from roughly where we were at before, which is great. I mean, that's exactly what you want.
And I did play this out already, so we already know what you selected, but you're staring at a hat, a map, and a quiver in this spot.
This isn't even really much of a choice. On APOC, hat makes buying EXP much easier. So a hat is pretty clear in my mind, because it also has a much better payoff once you reach 6. Obviously, treasure map is great, but we're really far from a treasure, and the hat gives immediate, EXP equity if we actually ever see any spells in the shop for it.
I love how we're really far from a treasure with the Brave Princess on board, by the way.
Brave Princess at 2 is 1,000 miles away from a treasure. That could never go off, and it wouldn't surprise me.
All right, so we're going up against a 37 health share bear.
I do want to.
Looks like they've had a strong start.
I want to ask one question, Jebas. Do you find yourself having troubles with captchas? Are you pretty good at proving that you're not a robot? Because I happen to notice there's a support on the front line.
Why wouldn't we have the support on the front line?
Oh, that's a battle mem.
It makes perfect sense, but it's such a bot maneuver. So
it is a bot maneuver, but in this spot, I mean, what is our alternative? Right? We could buy the money cat. We could buy the money cat, which would be fine. But I think that having the tier 2 pair was better than having the money cat. But yeah, I am a bit of a robot sometimes.
This combat, that Spellweaver, what we were just talking about, actually, the prior combat, when you get down to the last couple here, so Yeek's got some big stuff running, and you're just over here rocking this Queen of Hearts, but when you get to this spot, Spellweaver hits, and then you don't hit the Spellweaver immediately.
But we hit the ideal target, and then it also, like, we followed up with a good hit, so.
Yeah. Spellweaver hits your queen, though, then your queen hits the mim, then Spellweaver finally, you still would have won, but that thing could have hit your queen, and then your queen hit it again. Like,
yeah. I mean, they had a pretty good combat there, too, because our queen was quite large, but yeah, not taking damage is really the only thing that we care about at this point. So we don't care about putting damage on our opponents. We just need to not die. That's plan A right now, is not die until we get to 6 and then figure out where to go from there.
I feel like in general, we all have a ton of experience because you get through level 2 and 3, and most people who play this game have a ton of experience on level 2 and 3. And then this is, for me at least, where I feel like the game starts to diverge. Level 4 and level 5 is where all of your various game plans start to spider web out. And this is where your decision making becomes much more complex than what level 2 decision making is. Much less complex. Level 3 gets a little bit more. So now you're coming into level 4 with this board. You got a hat. You're playing APOC. What's going through your head?
I mean, the main plan is generally, especially with hat, is find XP and, leverage that to get to 6 as quick as we can. Because this Queen of Hearts is really strong right now, especially if we grab, a couple of random evils. But it doesn't take much for the Queen of Hearts to fall behind. A lightning dragon can hit it. All of a sudden we take, 10 damage that we weren't expecting to. So we can't rely on it to be the only carry here, even though it is a strong carry.
I think you did mention that Arthur would scale the Queen of Hearts.
It would, yeah.
Even though you
Like Medusa is a strong way of, being stable while you, sort of look for that EXP.
There's an interesting spot there. You could have taken a Hermes Magic Beans.
The beans would have been okay to try and get the Brave Princess, but again, because we sort of fell so behind, we're in a spot where we need to hit, right? We need to get a little lucky. We need to get those first attacks. We need to get the slays without needing to use something like the beans. Because otherwise, if we're not getting a little bit lucky in here, we're not going to be able to keep on this pace, right?
I think this is a spot where you can start being more optimistic. You're still at 31 health. Your board is not the greatest board ever for 4.0, but certainly has a chance to compete against some other boards. So I think this is the spot where I'm already now looking ahead thinking, all right, we turned this game around. Maybe we can do this.
Yeah, and one thing about Apocalypse that, as sort of a caveat to that is I've been in this spot on APOC before, and then you don't find any EXP at all, and you end up getting to 6 too late to be able to keep up with what other people are doing. Like if they're scaling through the mid game, and then your tier 6 board, if it's not like one of the higher percentage ones, you end up just like still bleeding out anyway. So we're looking pretty good here. The Queen of Hearts triple, like that sort of caught us up to parity with what our opponents roughly should be at. But we still do need to find that XP to really capitalize on our hero power, because otherwise we're playing without a hero power.
I want to bounce something off you and see what you think, because I've kind of created my own personal Apocalypse theory, which is that you need to be finding +2 XP throughout the course of the game before going to 6 if you want to maintain a pace where you have a reasonable shot to top 3, top 2, maybe even win the lobby. I think you need 2 experience. I don't think you need more, but I think if you get less, the same thing you just said about other people who have been building scaling boards, you'll go to 6, but you'll just be too late. You have a bunch of hodgepodge 6s, but they'll have power.
Yeah, it depends, I think, sometimes on like which 6s you get. If you get some of the better ones, you get offered basically a whole pumpkin board. You can be a little bit later, but yeah, I can see roughly around 2 EXP being a good number for that. There are a lot of boards where you just end up with like a 10-10 Storm King and a Lordy and Bearstein with no summons that just aren't great.
So now you're fighting X-Ray.
So we didn't get our Brave Princess Slay, which is not great. They've got a lot of ranged as well.
Did not finish their Nutcracker quest for them. That was not nice of you. Oh.
But we did attack into the ranged twice, which is insane for us here, because if we attack any other way, we lose that.
You're at a spot too where this big Queen of Hearts has to be you don't have anything else with any other stats. Your only stat unit is this Queen of Hearts, and if it has to carry the entire combat for you. Luckily you won that 50-50 and hit that Sporko at the end so that you could, but it's kind of sketchy because a lot of times in a spot like this, if you had like a 3-0 Water Wraith, you'd have something bulky on the front, something bulky in the back. You'd have a little bit more flexibility, but here you just don't have it.
Yeah, we have our Medusa to try and absorb some of the bigger stats in the front row, and then the Queen's just got to carry the load.
So for anybody that might be tuning in or joined us late, we're doing a game review of the final game of the Summer Championship from Jebas' perspective. Foreshadowing, if you didn't already know, Jebas is the Summer Champ. Does find a way to win this one, but we're going back through and figuring out how Jebas was able to pull that off.
Well, here's a pretty good idea of how I was able to pull that off.
This is, it's painting a picture.
Talking about that, we need roughly 2 EXP to pay it off. If you don't find it as a spell, this is a good way to do it. That was just introduced recently, where you can sort of pivot your plan to just forcing triples.
I'd like to circle back just a bit too. How different does this look if you had taken Treasure Map? Right? It really changes things drastically, I feel like. And I think a lot of people may have wanted to take Treasure Map there.
I mean, if we take Treasure Map, we have, no treasure up until this point. So now we're 4-1 with basically nothing going on, which is not great.
Yeah, you would be looking at a level 4 treasure if you had the Treasure Map and you chose to combine that Mim, which you wouldn't even really want to do.
Yeah, it wouldn't even be great. And then you'd sort of have to... You end up having to buy, weird stuff to try and get triples. and then you're sort of doom rolling to get those treasures, as opposed to just having something that gives you, economy every turn. Because now we're able to spend, 0 gold on upgrading a shop to see a bunch of 5s, which now we get a pretty big power spike from another ranged in the back row, plus, a siren, which is a 10/10, which is now, a new carry that we have that we can add to the board.
Yeah, this was a great outcome. Seeing the Masquerade Ball in a shop that's going to let you see multiple 5s is already huge. And the 5s that you see are pretty solid, especially when they have synergy together, like the Baba and the Siren do.
Yeah, I was sort of hoping for a big pig. I think that would have been an ideal hit. Just it would go on the board that we have with the Queen of Hearts very well. But, Baba's decent because it gives us a ranged support, and then the Siren obviously can be very good here.
I feel like lately I've been running Mim. Even an unupgraded Mim, I'll end up, say, like, with some animals like those black cats, and I'll end up trending toward an animal. I feel like I run Mim much longer than I used to. And I noticed, obviously, your Mim's upgraded in this spot, but it kind of fits better than your Evil Witch. Like, the Evil and Wicked Witches, the good and Wicked Witch supports feel like they kind of only have a place on level 3, and then they already start to get outdated on level 4. Why is it Mim so good?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that it has 0 attack, so you can control your attack order a bit in the back row. A lot of times, if you put a range back there, now that's going to be attacking before your, Mim has to rumble into combat. Mim is also cheap. Costs 2 gold. Like, that is relevant. That is something to think about. Obviously, in a perfect world, we'd have Sporkos, right? I would rather have a Sporko than this Baba Yaga. It's more attack. It's costs less. But, like, we didn't see a Sporko.
Would you, though? Do you know that throughout the course of all of this, one thing, this is not one that I put down for our stats, but one thing that I noticed was you bought 1 Sporko over these 5 games.
I mean, on this exact board, we would rather have Sporko,
sure.
I think. But I don't always buy Sporkos because they don't always fit every single board. But yeah, we can let it play. I mean, here the Baba's good, but it could have just as easily been a Sporko, and it would have also been good in that spot, I think.
Yeah. So now board should be getting bigger, and Cobalt Wolf is feasting.
So that was an amazing attack for us there, because we got the Slay on the Brave Princess in the only spot that we could.
Yeah, the 1 out of 4.
Yeah.
Nice thing about a feasting board like this is there's not a lot of beef in the back. Unfortunately, there was a range back there, so there was no way you could crack through the the thick outer coating of the feasting dragon.
Yeah.
But nothing was upgraded, so you didn't take a ton of damage. But now you're down to 24. But you did get your Slay, so here you are.
Yeah, the Slay helps a lot, because what we needed was 2 more treasures to be able to get the 2 EXP so that we can get to 6 as quick as we can. My treasure choice here is pretty easily just Sting, given that we know that we're trying to get to 6 as quick as we can. And the 6 payoffs are like Good Boy or Doom Breath, basically in slot 1. So then both of those function very well with Sting. So,
is that something you think about when playing an APOC game? Because I know it's something I think about is the treasure good for right now, but also is it good for when I go to 6? Is that part of your thought process?
Yeah, that was, I think Fancy Pants is probably a better treasure than Sting a lot of the time, like on most boards, but I think for APOC, certainly Sting is a lot better.
So you finally got a full set of treasures. You just need 1 more, and you can finally pop this puzzle rune.
We get to reposition and take out the Brave Princess, which is nice because it makes our board a bit stronger too. We're making ourselves weaker by taking this, but it is definitely worth it, I think.
The number of times, I feel like that should be, we should have some sort of, just in SBB in general, the number of times someone says, I know I shouldn't triple this black cat, and then immediately proceeds to triple the black cat. I know I'm guilty of it all the time. It happens so often, but it's like, well, this treasure's probably going to set me up in a slightly better spot. So I probably have to take it, but I know I'm not supposed to.
Like, it's worth taking, but it does feel bad because, like, we know that we're stronger without it. But we have too much gold to, like, hold it for now, so we just got to move it on it.
I feel like we may have done a little bit of treasure foreshadowing, but I have a hunch what you're going to take here.
I mean, it's definitely Crown of Atlas, right, with our queen board.
Yeah, pretty easy cookbook. You take something there regardless. There's no
we have to take something. Cookbook is the best of the bunch by a lot. So, we don't love it because it doesn't really make that big of a difference, but it definitely is worth grabbing something there to get the XP, so we may as well take that one. And then here we're just upgrading our board. I was ideally looking for like a big pig or another cat or something, but we'll take a mummy. It's fine. Like, it's whatever. Something to fill the board that's good at the queen that keeps us alive, basically.
Yeah. Because now we're in that 5.1 APOC situation where if you find XP, you'd be happy to freeze it so you could flip it at the start of next turn, just play it, cast
that
it immediately.
Too. Yep. So we were rolling to kind of look for one of those two things to just, again, take the least amount of damage because we're at 26 now, which is getting less than what I would like. And we could have found EXP and locked it, and that would have also been an acceptable outcome here.
So now we get to see what Waddle's been up to this whole time, and Waddle is Godmother with a stinged baby bear. Seems to be the powerhouse, and that sting with a baby bear is pretty strong.
They're doing Waddle stuff, which is not great for us.
We also talked about earlier, you mentioned how more often in these tournaments you'll see Sultak, and this Sultak did have enough health that didn't allow the Siren to slay, and then the mummy damage went directly behind the Sultak, so it was negated. So Sultak doing exactly what it's supposed to do there and was pretty valuable, but you do still put them down to 1 health.
I think there's a positioning problem on this board, like from our opponent's side. I don't think that the friendly spirit should have been in slot 7 here.
That's what I wanted to go back to this because that was the biggest disaster of the fight for them, was not getting those friendly stats on anything, right?
Yeah. And for me, I usually, even on Godmother boards, I try to put friendly spirit in the front because, I mean, imagine if they have the extra 5 attack on something that takes 2 hits or is able to attack twice, then all of a sudden we may just lose that fight or tie, as opposed to not getting any of the stats at all. In a perfect world, the friendly spirit would die first here and then they get maximum health, but I have to assume that combat does not go perfectly a lot of the time. So I typically would try to put that in the front row just to make sure that it goes off.
I'm looking at this moment in particular because if that Godmother had hit, left or right, hadn't hit directly into your queen, and then the friendly had popped, it still was only going to take it up to, like a 9, let's say it takes 3 damage. It's got 14 health left. Your queen was still going to hit in and get the Godmother down. But the friendly would have cleaned up maybe your Baba. Maybe they could have got through but you still got that Mim back there that the friendly had to hit into. Even if things had gone maybe they were in a situation though where things just hadn't come quickly enough and they felt like they needed to get that
could be
perfect fight RNG and that biggest friendly spirit on something.
It worked out for us because we were in a spot where we really didn't improve our board, but we got EXP the turn prior, so now we're in let's find EXP if we can. That would be ideal, but if not, I was considering what can I do to make my board stronger, big pigs, something along those lines, and then we'll just accept that we're going to just get our new board next turn.
This turn can feel a bit uncomfortable, I think, sometimes for me personally. How much do you greed for the experience? Do you ignore everything else? It's not as hard on ladder, right? Because you don't have, money in a championship on the line. But part of me at 26 health wants to only look for experience. But you also know that you need to improve your board or else you're going to take a big chunk of damage here.
Yeah, one of the things that I've found is, it is nice to get the tier 6 board early and maybe have a little bit of extra gold because you sold all your stuff. But there is also that element of now I can't cast a spell on tier 6. We know how this game ends up turning out where we don't have a hero power after this turn. So we need to change our hero as soon as we can. And if you buy EXP here, that's not an option. There is an element of it is nice to not have your spell locked going into tier 6, because we have that hat. So it is easier for us to dream if we see one.
Well, it's kind of interesting too. It's a question of, in some ways, would your random 6 board be better than this? Probably.
Maybe. It depends on how good Dragon is if we get one. It depends on how good, if we see a Pumpkin, how strong that ends up being.
It's not usually something you sweat on ladder. You just go. But
yeah,
in a tournament setting, if your board is stronger now, if you didn't do any of the you didn't get a fast Heartwood Elder, you weren't brewing stats, but you can't neglect these early phases of the game on APOC. So and you haven't here. Your board is good enough to fight. You've got a reasonable expectation to be able to take a combat or lose very little health throughout the course of a combat.
And you wonder, okay, let's say that I rolled into EXP here, so we have a 2-cost EXP in this shop. Is there even a world where I would want to sell my whole board to buy it? I'm not sure that I would, because we would only really have enough gold to buy a Nian, roughly. We could roll once and buy a 6. It may not even be worth buying it to flip our board, because I've seen some pretty stinky APOC boards that just don't really get there.
Yep, totally agreed. Somewhere around here you're saying, let's see if we can set up a better board for stuff to buy.
Yeah, and obviously we can only look at 5s, but there are some decent 5s that you can, like a Robin Wood is a reasonable thing to lock. And we could have even potentially locked the Big Pig there. Because there are some boards that, Pumpkin, Big Pig is fine. An Apple Tree would have been a reasonable find as well. But again, we can look for tier 6s if we don't lock 2. So would have had to have been a pretty nice shop, I think.
So now we've seen our second feaster, Nuclear Goo, also feasting. Got a Creeper, which you just refused to hit.
Yeah, just let him get all the free stats. No big deal. They're essentially the same board that we have, except just better by a lot.
Yeah,
it's more stats, bigger board.
Clearly, the result of some of their feasting has started to kick in. That's fairly sizable, ranged on the back line. Their queen is smaller than your queen, but it doesn't really matter.
They're also ball cookbook on Potion Master, so they've been able to target buff some of their stuff throughout the course of this game. Their treasure suite is better than ours. Everything that's going on is just favorable towards them in this fight. It's not ideal, but we have a little bit of health to play with, so.
Well, I think since...
Yeah, that's...
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a pretty big hit, but being able to protect your health enough up to this point to still be at 16 means that, you certainly could take 16 damage in a fight, but it doesn't feel like you're necessarily in one-shot range. So it does give you enough of a buffer where I think you can still be open-minded, see what you get next turn with APOC and feel like you don't have to panic and force it into one thing. I think you still have some options from here.
Yeah.
Since we're about to hit the very exciting moment of what are you going to get for APOC units, I think let's take a break and let's talk about spells. What do you guys think?
Sure.
I have a question or two, a bit of a pop quiz for you, Jebas, or maybe more than two. So, what do you think was your most cast spell throughout the course of these 5 games? I want to see what chat thinks too. What was the spell that you cast the most times? You cast it 8 total times.
8 total times, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Probably free roll.
Interesting choice.
Could be free roll. Could be coin. I mean, you end up casting a lot of coins.
Some people think Bam thinks knighthood.
I cast a lot of healing potions too. It's kind of interesting to think about.
Okay.
Well, so
I know the answers, so I'm not gonna guess.
Turns out it was Burning Palm. You cast Burning Palm 8 times over the course of these 5 games.
I mean, we did have one Aeon Ball game, which I probably cast 4 or 5 of them in that game alone, because Burning Palm is a very good hit for Aeon because it makes Aeon more likely to slay.
Yeah, that's why it was interesting that you were going with coin and free roll. That make a lot of sense, but anytime you had a game, just a single game out of 5, of course, but an Aeon Ball game, the targeted spells end up getting cast a lot more.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Let me see. You cast Lucky Coin a total of 6 times throughout all of these games, and I have the numbers on free roll here too. Oh, a lot of your free rolls came off of Genie's Wishes. You only cast it twice.
Oh, well, I can see that.
All right, well, since we talked about it, how many health potions did you cast over the 5 games?
5.
Wow, very decisive on that one.
That was a quick answer. Curious if we have any chat guesses on this one. We got a 4. The truth is, you almost tied the number of burning palms you cast. You cast 7.
Wow.
7
Yeah.
health potions.
Health Potion's a good spell. It's very strong.
Here's
People are not casting them. They probably should be casting them more.
so we got another one here that I'm curious. How many total spells do you think you cast that you purchased out the shop?
Total spells?
Total spells throughout all 5 games. How many?
Jeez. So we
This
know that our
feels-
average turn count was like, what, 16, 18, whatever it was. So I probably cast a total of like 5 games.
Over 400.
140 spells, maybe.
I feel like this is a really difficult one to answer. Again, I know the answer, so I'm not going to guess, but I would not have had a clue where to start.
Our total number of spells is 113. Cast 113.
It's a lot.
All right, I have one last, and yes, just responding to the game is currently paused because we are right before the exciting part, and we have to ask a handful of quiz questions here. Of course, we gotta leave you waiting for just a moment. What was the average spell cost of all the spells you played throughout the entire day 2 if you had to pay full price of all 113 spells that you cast?
It's probably like 1.8, something in that range, 1.7. It's like the average cost is like 2, but it's probably a little bit below 2 just because there's a lot of cheap spells.
You got some good guesses in chat. The funny thing is your 1.8, what I have here is 1.88.
I think if you just look at the average cost for spells in the game, it's probably like pretty close to that. Because I know that I didn't cast any Knighthoods in like any of the games really, so that is what would throw it off. No, Magus, it's accounting for just the full cost.
Yeah, just the full cost, not any discounts. That was way too much work for me. All right, well,
So you said you didn't play any Knighthoods. I think you also didn't play a lot of experience throughout. Is that true?
I would believe that, yeah. I think I played a couple, but not a ton.
you
I
actually
mean, I didn't buy any in this game.
you did play one Knighthood.
Did I? Interesting. Was that in the Aeon game? I bet it was.
You were Gwen once.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, got him.
I've been so got.
I did my research. That's all I'm saying. I did my research. All right, enough pausing. Let's see what your board became.
It was a pretty good one, actually. There's no Lordy. There's no Storm King.
No Bearstein?
Sorry, Storm Scion. No Bearstein.
Pretty cohesive batch of things. You can.
Yeah, it's not bad because we can do trees pretty easily. We can do Good Boy without a lot of effort. We can do Pumpkin. I think we're a little bit more in Pumpkin or trees than we are in Good Boy. Like looking at this board.
I'd agree.
Not to say that we're not in Good Boy, but I think we're a little bit more in the other ones. And then we get to change our hero, which is amazing immediately.
Yeah, so let's go back and take a glance at the selections you had here. Curse King, Jax Giant, Morgan, or Pan?
Pan is pretty good, right? But the immediate tier 6 treasure, it's too hard to pass that up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do think Pan's Shadow would be a reasonable like second. Now this was sort of an interesting treasure selection that I think is very clear to me, but I know that on the like the main coverage they thought it would be Phoenix Feather, just like a slam dunk Phoenix Feather, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Phoenix Feather is pretty good, but I don't think it is nearly on the same power level as Wand of Weirding in this spot.
The interesting thing.
I tend to think that Wand of Weirding might be the most underrated treasure in the game. So sometimes if you're behind another board, having a double Pigo is huge. But then there are many other ways to get value out of it. Do you think it's underrated by the community as a whole, or do you just think you prioritize it higher?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think that people who have not taken Wand before don't recognize the power level that it can give you. Like, double Evil Twin is absolutely insane. Like, that is a way of really giving yourself... All of a sudden, we cast one spell, and we just get a tier 6 triple instantly. Like, that is something that is not to be underrated and shouldn't be. They'll see the power of Fork, and they're like, oh, it's about this range if you don't have Hat Ball. Wand is on a totally different level to Fork. even if you get it really early, like double casting EXP and things like that is just can be wild.
Well, and the other thing with Phoenix Feather right here is if you look at your board, what are you feathering back? It's a Green Knight? At
It
this
would be a Green
current
Knight, yeah.
moment in time. Now, that doesn't mean that, you pick up an Ash and an Echo, or a Burning and an Echo, and all of a sudden the Phoenix Feather is phenomenal. But you don't. The one problem with your early APOC board is you don't have any high sources of toughness. You don't have a lot of high HP things.
Yeah. Like, and because we have the wand, we can pick up the Cindy for a pretty free treasure. And we did find an evil twin, which is exactly what we were hoping for. Because our board, like our tier 6 board, was pretty good. So we didn't need to make a massive improvement on it. And now we're set up to really go huge next turn.
Yeah, it was kind of...
Yeah, that's really big there. Really big.
It was kind of tricky that you had to... I noticed Megas pointing this out, but you had to replace the Sting here when you've got a Doom Breath.
So if we ended up staying Good Boy, I wanted the cookbook because theoretically, if we're buffing Good Boy, I wanted to buff it more aggressively. Like if, let's say we find a second Good Boy, I didn't feel that we needed Sting on this turn because it is 5.1. If a 20 attack Doom Breath isn't going to kill anything, we're probably not going to win that fight no matter what we pick here, whether it's Sting or otherwise. But on 5-1, 20 attack, especially against Beauty, should be more than sufficient to kill whatever's in the back row.
You had seen...
And that's why we replaced Sting.
I think it was Yikbaka earlier was running the Soul Tack, or was it... It was one of the people playing Feasting, I believe. But you had noticed a Soul Tack. But Beauty often has... Queen of Hearts often has some kind of support, maybe some kind of summon. But Beauty very often has some very key things in the back.
Yeah. So I figured 20 was plenty, which is the reason that I ended up opting to get rid of Sting. But I think if somebody got rid of Cookbook and kept the Sting, that would also have, been reasonable there. But it was more if we decided to, go the Good Boy line.
And now we see Beauty is playing Pumpkin, Oni Tyrant. Beauty is also at 6 with you.
It wasn't the best hit we could have gotten, but it was decent,
Yeah, you don't love cleaving corner, but if you're going to cleave corner, hitting a pumpkin early in the fight with that Doom Breath is really nice.
Taking out that
and then we actually
was huge.
Yeah, it was insane there, because then we got to trigger the tier 6 treasure from Herc. Also, since we had the Hercules, I was hoping that we would get another treasure, then we were going to have to replace the cookbook anyway. So maybe it really didn't matter too much.
Thinking ahead. Yep. Good fight, RNG. Very close fight. Down to just 18 left on your Green Knight in the end. That could have gone either way.
Yeah.
All right. So you got your evil twin. You're 4 off from Hercules completing. You almost got there. Where are you going now?
Yeah, and in this spot, I'm thinking, do we want to play Good Boy? Answer, no, not really. We're too far from Good Boy. We're more in Pumpkin. I think I say that on the stream too. And Green Knight is actually a very, very strong card with Pumpkin because it makes your Pumpkin summons have a lot more health, which can be very interesting. You summon an apple with an extra 20 health in the front row. It might get more than one attack into it or whatever. This seems pretty clear to me. Boom. Get another tier 6 treasure, make an upgraded Green Knight.
You didn't want to do the Hercules?
As well as the Green Knight will be evil now too, right? So
yeah, that's exactly why, is because it makes it evil. Because you could make an evil boy here as well, turn the good boy evil. But I just don't think we need to do that in this spot because the rest of our board really doesn't work with that. So we'll run good boy for now, but it's got to go.
So break these treasures down.
And this is very easy.
Because if you're looking at a Pumpkin board, Spear and Singing Sword both make a lot of sense.
I think Spear is better with Pumpkin by a lot. Sorry, Sword. Sword is better than Spear by a lot because you just get the flat attack. They don't need to be attacking. And a lot of times your front row is not attacking when you summon them with the Pumpkin. They're getting attacked into, right? Because your Pumpkin is in the back row. That's where you're attacking. So I think the Singing Sword is much, much better here because your units are getting attacked into. It's also a bit better with the Green Knight that we just made as well, because now we have plus 15, 20 for whatever is in front of the Green Knight. And this still hedges us into trees or good boy. More leans us into the potential for trees, depending upon what our shops produce.
And it's just
Yeah, the Robin Wood is great here. It works with the Ashwood as well as you still have the Good Boy. Kind of not by choice, I believe. I think you're trying to work away from it, but it's nice when you find the things that are flexible that allow you to play it currently, and also you might still want to keep it going forward.
Yeah, it's just a pretty... Robin Wood is a very, very strong unit right now because it doesn't necessarily lock you into one comp or another. I just think it's a pretty strong 5 in general because of that, because it's open to trees, it's open to good boy.
Other really nice thing here is because you took Singing Sword, and you really don't need Boom Hilda that badly anymore. Your Doom Breath may or may not have quite enough attack to get the job done, but it's now not as crucial. Your board, you put a lot more stats down. Your Robin Wood's instantly attacking well, and honestly, health on the Good Boy is probably more useful than attack in this. So everything kind of all pieces together very nicely here.
Yeah. We have some very good treasures. It was a really nice power spike.
And now we see another pumpkin. So many pumpkins.
And this is the reason that like the Green Knight and the sword is so powerful. Because you see, normally Medusa in the mirror is very, very strong, but it doesn't do anything against us. Not really. Because, okay, yeah, you're turning our thing with a bunch of stats into something with a little bit less stats, but it still doesn't trade down. Our statues are the same size as their units.
That was arguably the best, maybe the Good Boy, but the best...
The worst hit is the Herc. I don't care about any of the other ones.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dragon would have been kind of sad, but as long as the Herc is still around, I think that's fine.
That statue ate 2 things, by the way. It ate the thing that made it, as well as the first half of these 3 big pigs. Oh, and then you hit directly into the Dusa there.
Yeah, and then we still kill the Dusa that eats our thing. So, like, they're not able to get the multiple attacks on Medusa because we have things that add extra health, or extra attack, rather. The true enemy of Medusa is, +5 attack.
So we go back to turn 2 where you lose both eggs, and now we're turn 13, and this is a totally different game.
I mean, that's APOC in a nutshell, right? You get to tier 6, and you're now all of a sudden you're playing a different game. Eats your whole board, gives you 42 gold worth of 6s. That's a pretty dramatic change.
So here you're staring at the arc, and you're going, how do I get a 2, 3, 4, and 5? Least pick treasure on Apocalypse got to be the arc.
It's pretty rough to make work on APOC, for sure. But Spear's a decent upgrade over the hat, It's definitely not bad on Pumpkin. It's just, I don't think it's as good as the Singing Sword, but now we have an opportunity to pick it up again. We're fine with it.
So okay, we know what's rolling up here, but where are you still thinking? I mean, you're looking pretty pumpkin or tree. Are you still thinking Good Boy at all anymore?
Not really, no. I'm thinking either pumpkins or trees at this point, and we can... again, we see this burning tree here. That's perfect. It's pumpkin, it's tree, it's a little bit of everything kind of all wrapped up. I would be looking for shard also would be fine for this Hercules, just to get an upgraded 6, because almost every upgraded 6 is fine in this spot for us.
Oh.
Pretty big.
And now it's pretty obvious what direction we're going to go since we see another pumpkin here.
Not the most obvious board placement. So you're kind of thinking through it right now. Because sometimes you want to have a 5/7 pumpkin, but you got to play this Boom Hilda now.
Really nice recognition here to know that if you play the spell, you'll get offered a treasure. You can opt to skip if you want to, instead of having to try to figure out what to sell. Not that you needed that combat spell necessarily, but then it's played twice on the Doom Breath. There are some situations where that could matter. What are you thinking here on the treasure selection? Were you going into it thinking you were just going to skip, or were you looking for runestones?
I was looking for runestones, and if I didn't see them, I was going to skip and buy the pumpkin this turn. So the reason that I positioned the way that I did is the plan was to just get rid of Herc if I, replace Herc with the pumpkin, but then keep it so that I could shard it. So we have, 2 gold left here. If we skip, then we can very easily and cleanly, sell the chicken, buy the pumpkin, straight up, But if we take a treasure, which the only treasure that we would take at this point is the runestones, then that opens us up to a tier 7 treasure. If you hit a tier 7 treasure with the tier 6s that we already have, it's gonna be hard to lose the lobby, right? Then it's our lobby to lose at that point. So yeah, pretty happy with the runestones here. We didn't need the spear. Like, we were plenty strong enough without it anyway. Here I'm waffling like, what if I play Good Boy still?
With 2 pumpkins and a fully evil board, yeah.
Hey, I've hit Radiant Prism as much as the next people here, so you could just have your Good Boy on your pumpkin board then.
Yeah.
But this was a very good turn for us. Very, very good. Because now we have a tier 6 pair as well that can lead us into the tier 7 treasure.
And Cobalt Wolf is looking pretty solid with an Excalibur over there.
Yeah, they had the scaled up board. They had the early dragon, like the Feasty Boy was eating a bunch of stuff. So they had a pretty big board, and then the Excalibur makes everything upgraded. It's scary.
Also a Soul Tack.
Yep.
And a Soul Tack, yeah. But we had probably the best hit we possibly could have with our dragon, and then we had a good follow-up from the pumpkin summoning the apple bomb, right?
Yeah, that rotten apple tree was filthy right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
We might have had enough stats to tie, I think, without the apple tree, but I don't think we could have won that without it.
Absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
And just like that, top 3. I think, how many people got eliminated that round? Was it 3?
It was 3, yeah.
Sure enough.
Yeah, that was a big turn. Just a lot of people died.
You're live. What is running through your mind now?
I mean, I'm not really thinking about the end of the game yet. I'm still trying to make our board better. I've played enough of this game to know that you're never deterministically a victor, especially when playing pumpkins, because you can just have really crappy pumpkins and lose anyway. Or your opponent can Medusa you and send you to the Shadow Realm, and then all of a sudden your pumpkins do nothing. So it's hard to be like, oh, I'm locked, because I'm not yet. Until we're on that very final board when I obviously am just gonna win, I'm not ready to be excited yet, because I don't want to disappoint myself, and I don't want to get myself in a bad mindset where, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm winning, so I don't need to play tight. I still need to make sure that I'm playing as efficiently and as well as I can.
I also noticed that you point that out right after we just faced Cobalt Wolf, and you mentioned yourself you don't know if you would have had a way to win that fight had you not had the apple tree get the effect triggered by the echo attacking into it, which is pretty huge. So yeah, these things can happen. I like your approach here and your attitude. Just
you can always get pig-out out of the game. Like, that's always an option that we can pig out people just as easily as they can pig us. Sometimes they have a monster book or a 9th book, and just you get pigged 5 times, and then it doesn't matter what you were playing, you just are dead.
Interestingly enough, you can't disrespect ghosts in this setting. Their boards are going to be strong. So you go ahead and amp up the Doom Breath a little bit here too. Somewhere right around here you were saying everybody is pumpkin in this lobby, so that's kind of scary.
Yeah, I was looking at everybody's board, and every single player has a pumpkin. So one of the reasons that we put a little bit more attack on the dragon is we know that is going to be good in pumpkin situations, right? In the mirror, Doom Breath is king, because if you kill a pumpkin, that's a lot of stats that they're just not going to be able to have.
And this was not a free fight by any means. You just have a little bit too much, and the singing sword's pretty handy.
Yeah, the sword carried us here, because then all of our, 10 Baba Yagas that we summoned are able to at least participate in combat. But yeah, I mean, this was a lot closer of a fight than you'd imagine, and they didn't cast a spell here. It wouldn't take much for a Pigamorph to hit a pumpkin, and all of a sudden we don't win that.
Another huge moment, too. You get the ghost fight, clean it up, despite a corner cleave with your Doom Breath, and now it's top 2.
You also have a lot of information on each other because you've just fought recently, which often happens when you get this late in the game. So you can maybe use that information. But again, you talked about some pumpkins throughout. The Doom Breath is great, as you mentioned, but there's only so much you can do against the pumpkin. There's a lot of RNG involved. So right now, you're going to obviously see what this treasure is going to be. A level 7 treasure is going to be big as well.
Now, this right here's a choice.
The more I thought about it, and I've thought about this after the game too, this is actually not a choice. This is a very obvious pick. Given that we know what our opponent is playing, it's just like very clear to me that it's never the 100 sword because we just don't need it.
Yeah, I like that recognition. Plus 100 sword is good with the Doom Breath. It's also good with Pumpkin because it'll resummon into that same slot. But you're right, if you don't need that extra attack and you're going to face a large number of summons potentially on your opponent's board and not a couple of big characters, getting stats across your board is nice.
Yeah, and we know what treasures they have. We know that they have Paw, so Paw is giving +5, right? Why not take a thing that gives +7? Then we're always winning in fair trades. So if we just have an equal number of random idiots, then ours are going to win every time, And that was my consideration. Because you see, I am almost like, 100 sword is great. Very obvious here.
Yeah, you almost snatched that thing up.
But then I noodle it a little bit, and I'm like, well, we don't really need another 100 attack on our dragon. Our dragon is already going to kill whatever it hits anyway. So why don't we just pick something that gives us 100 bonus dust?
Yeah, I like this a lot because I don't think it's immediately obvious. I think you needed the time to think about it. I would have been in the exact same situation as far as just trying to figure it out because plus 100 sword generally would be the auto pick here. Fairy Queen's Wand, not the highest pick. But then you're also going to get some extra dust if you win, PogChamp.
I think and we had a lot of time to think about it too. We have 5 gold left, but we're not really looking for that much stuff here. We can very easily put this Robin Hood in, so it's not like we need desperately another unit to fix our board either.
I think one quick note though that, and I know a lot of people do know, but not everybody necessarily knows, is you might see the Black Prism in a spot like this and go, oh, I've got Wand of Weirding. That looks really good. But it turns out that Black Prism is only really good with Mimic. It's good with Wand or Fork, but Black Prism only doubles the spell on what you target with Wand of Weirding, whereas with Mimic, Black Prism doubles single cast on the thing you target and then double cast on everything else. And of course that's more of a stats-based thing and we're in a different spot from all of that, so that wasn't really a consideration. But it could be easy to look at that and go, oh, I've got Wand. There's another spell treasure. That looks pretty good. But it actually was not appropriate for this spot at all.
Yeah, we're really happy with +7/+7. That's basically all you ever really want on Pumpkin is just volume of stats. But it is definitely worth considering the 100 sword there. So I'm glad that I gave myself the time to think about it. But after thinking about it after the game and rewatching this a few times, it's really clear that it's always the Fairy Queen's Wand.
This is a question I've been waiting to ask. In this spot, you clearly want the pumpkin. You have some gold left over. You have 2 options if you want to make that play. It's buy a spell or buy something out of the shop and hold the gold over. I love the kidnap. When you took this kidnap, was it more of, hey, we have a couple of gold we need to spend, let's play the kidnap? Or was this, hey, our opponent's board is also pumpkin, maybe we actually kidnap something that we want?
A little bit of both. We don't need the gold necessarily. Like, there's not that much gold that we need to spend per turn to improve our position. We know that there's a pumpkin, so we don't really need to bank 1 gold. Since we have the wand, I'm fine with kidnapping 2 random things. Like, we know that they have Medusas. We know that they have, apple bombs. We can take a reasonable spot there. Like, that would improve our board some. We don't need a lot to make our board better. So I think taking 2 random things off of their board, it's going to be decent enough. It is at least 2 gold from the kidnap too.
Yeah.
So it is just the same amount of gold banking, if not more, by just casting it. So worst case scenario is that we get 2 crappy things and we can just sell them, and that's fine too.
Yeah, it's definitely the play here. I just was more curious in the mindset of, are you playing it just because you need to play it? It
would be cool if we stole a pumpkin, but you can't really rely on
right.
Stealing anything. So sometimes with kidnap, you're just like, yeah, what do we get? It'll be cool if we get something cool. If not, we got 2 gold. So like the downside on it is almost non-existent here, unless we kill no units, in which case it didn't matter if we cast Kidnap or Bot a thing anyway. We're just dead. So I think it made a lot of sense to cast here, and it was a really good position to do it.
So we have not seen just how big and scary this board got in a couple of turns, and there's a Croc, there's a Medusa, there's a Cupid. This is Scam City, and your pumpkin immediately gets clapped.
But in the mirror, we have the king, which is the Doombreath Dragon. And in case you missed it, the way that Doombreath steals and the way the Kidnap works is it will steal in reverse order of the board position. So it'll go 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So Doombreath attacked into the slot 7 pumpkin, which was inside that Croc. So we stole 2 of those.
You got very lucky having very little scam on their resummons, but we do have to go. We have to step back to that moment. We have to straight back to that Doombreath flying in, just like what you were just saying here. It hits the big pigs on the front line, but like you said, due to the sequencing, that's not what you're kidnapping.
Yeah. So we were always getting at least either 2 Medusas, or we were getting the pumpkin here. So we were either getting their Croc or the Medusas in 5, because if we hit the tree or we hit the pig, we were still killing the Croc first. So this was just such an insane spot here, because 66% of the time we're just taking that Croc full of pumpkin.
The most.
And let me ask you this as we lead into it. This is an interaction that maybe not everybody knows. I feel like you know the interactions in this game as well as anybody. Was this an interaction that you were certain when you have a Croc inside a pumpkin that you got from a Kidnap? How certain were you, basically, that
I was
the
like
pumpkin was inside there?
95 to 99. Like, I wasn't absolutely certain that it worked, because I feel like there had been times in the game when it didn't work properly.
Yes. That is true. There was a time, and it got changed. I remember the patch.
But I know that they have been working on fixing a lot of those things. So I had a pretty high confidence, enough that I was willing to, like, have a unit that was a little bit suboptimal on the board to take the chance. Because I think we were strong enough regardless to not die if I was wrong.
You said, and I quote, "Now the question is, does what's inside the Croc actually resummon? I'm pretty sure it does, but I don't remember for sure. I suppose we may find out here very quickly."
Yeah. Yeah, so now you have all of these pumpkins. You have to figure out what comes off of the board for these pumpkins, because you certainly want to play them. There's another one in the shop. You have to feel great right now.
Yeah.
I think you have to be a heavy, heavy favorite at this point.
Yeah, we're looking pretty good here. Even just the extra pumpkin alone would have put us in a pretty good spot anyway. But I'm like trying to figure out where to position these things in my mind, because, do you put both Crocs in the back to make sure that they get delayed? I don't think that you do, because then, you're going to get clogged a lot more. So then, like, where do you position all these pumpkins? We want them all on the board probably, especially in the mirror, but it's just like, where do we put them all?
Yeah, it's really tough positioning here. And then you have some synergy on the board, right? Between the Ashwood and the Burning Trees and the Green Knight. And so there's not one thing that really wants to be removed, but you certainly want these Crocs and these pumpkins in play.
I think I'm pretty happy with where I ended up settling, where you have the crappy unupgraded pumpkin sort of die early, and then we have one of the Crocs in the front so that we can get additional summons out of it, and it delays it a little bit. And then we have the final one getting delayed in the back. I'm pretty happy with this positioning.
This has to be one of the most absurd positioning puzzles that's ever occurred in this game. This right here. When do you get 2 Croc upgraded pumpkins with an upgraded pumpkin with an unupgraded this is ridiculous.
Yeah, we
You've
just
got good
casually
treasures.
have infinite pumpkins here. We're at 10 pumpkins on this board. If I would have seen a Croc, I probably slam that other upgraded pumpkin in it just for the memes.
All right, y'all ready for the final showdown here? Oh, it's just absurd. And that Doombreath.
Our Doombreath was a hero the whole time, obviously.
So it's not over. As long as there's a golden pumpkin on the board, it's never over. However,
Yeah.
we're looking at 3 golden pumpkins versus 1 here. It seems like it's over.
Yeah, and again, we go back to like all those extra stats that we're getting, just like the passive stats, make these Medusas not really much of a threat, because our fail case is that it just turns into a statue that's as big as the summons, right?
Yeah.
And then we end with what looks to be the most ridiculous board, right? Where we just have 3 upgraded pumpkins on the board killing them, which is a great finish, you know?
Yeah, winning with style.
I loved watching back just the instant smile and the instant pose of relaxation and just this moment.
Yeah, we knew that we got that 200 dust.
Oh,
So
yeah, you gotta bask in the dust right here. You gotta. And then the most wonderful thing immediately you say, I should give something away.
yeah, I'd actually said on stream, you know, a couple of days prior to the tournament that if I made top 8, that I was going to do, because I still had a super pan code from whatever, the January tournament or whatever. So I, you know, was going to give that away with a top 8 either way. But then, you know, then we won. I figured that was a perfect time to do it. We had, you know, the max number of people that I possibly could have on the channel at that time, probably. You know, so we gave it away, and that was good.
All right, let's flip back to on cam. This is more so that you know I'm doing it, but here we go. Man, that's got to be one of the coolest finals that will ever happen.
Yeah, really fun to watch. Playing certainly was even more fun, I'm sure, but that was a great one.
Yeah, it was a bit of a roller coaster of a game, right? Because we have such a terrible start that we needed to get lucky in a few spots, and we had some good combats early, and we had a couple of really solid, let's maximize our chance for getting back into this and high rolling. You know, the Mix-a-Whizzle that hit the Queen of Hearts, I think, was probably the key spot there, where, you know, you even mentioned it, we had a 6/6 frog. I don't think every single person that plays this game would make that same choice to try and mix that into something else. And then they miss out on that equity of, hey, I did get the triple. That allowed us to be stable and, you know, survive enough to get to 6.
Yeah, you had to take some lines that weren't guaranteed to work out at all in order to get yourself back stable, like you're saying. And then you can't fully, people want to say, oh, it's tournament, you just play tempo. Just play tempo. But it doesn't mean anything really in a way.
It doesn't always work. It's not always enough to win the lobbies, you know, especially in a spot where the only result that matters is first. Playing tempo is great if you want to get 4th or 3rd or 2nd. You're not always going to be able to be bigger than the guy that did high roll if you do that.
Yeah. Well, I think might be fun to go through a couple more numbers. I got one last batch of stats that we could play with here. So, you know, these are numbers. Are they important? No, definitely not. But maybe. No, it's not. It's not important. What do you think, Jebas, was the average level character that you purchased throughout the course of all of these games? I jotted down everything you bought.
Average level character is probably 3.8 or 4. It's like somewhere around there.
I see a 3.7, a 3.5 in chat. My numbers came back at 3.165. Primarily 2s and 3s.
I don't know who out here is trying to force half all that much, but that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, it speaks to the kind of lobbies, though, too. They sometimes are over very quickly, and you're playing to get the best placement you possibly can. You didn't have a lot of games where you had the leeway, like that last one we just watched, to be buying that many level 6 characters at the end of the game. You had to go quicker.
That's true, yeah.
All right, how many...
I mean, we also didn't buy any of our 6s really in the final game, comparatively. We just got them for free, so that throws the number off a little bit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Those Crocs, you stole those. And this I specifically said not stolen / RNG'd from the shop, so I didn't count anything that you grabbed from a roll the dice or anything that you kidnapped. But yeah, you did buy a burning tree or 2, but outside of that...
Couple burning trees, yeah. Not a whole lot of other... Because, I mean, you just get a whole board. Our board was pretty good. Like a pumpkin and a couple burning trees.
Across 5 games, how many chickens did you purchase?
I buy a lot of chickens. Wow.
I'm so curious what you're going to answer here.
5 games, I would say that it's at least probably 6 or 7 per game. I'm gonna say like 35.
That's a lot of chickens.
There's a lot of chickens.
Let me double check this because we got a couple of guesses in chat coming in. Let me make sure. I never did type golden chicken. I only ever typed chicken. By my count, you purchased 11 chickens over 5
Really?
games.
Wow.
It was only
That
11.
surprises me. I'm out here ignoring chickens.
I mean, you're not always in the spot to pick them up, but when you are in the spot to pick them up,
True.
you're going to just pick them up and then, probably sell them
Yeah.
off later the same turn potentially, but it's a good habit to get into. Buy more chickens in general.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder, I know day one I bought a lot more because I think there was a game where I played Hippocampus, so I think I bought a lot more then. But yeah, that's interesting.
Outside of chicken, what do you think was your most purchased character?
Most purchased character. You did buy a lot of black cats. It's probably going to be a 2 or a 3, I would imagine.
I'm going to say it's probably not Time Flies. I see that
It's
in
probably
chat.
not Time Flies. I don't think I bought any Time Flies. I'm going to guess that it's Black Cat.
You are right. You bought Black Cat 7 times throughout the course of those 5 games.
Yeah, Black Cat. It's a good card. I would guess Mim, but at a certain point, like, you're not always picking up extra Mims. Whereas sometimes on 4, you do still buy Black Cat.
Yeah, I was going to mention that actually because I alluded to this with Cookbook. It's a treasure, a level 2 treasure that you might want early. You might also want late. Black Cat is kind of the same in a different way, obviously, but a Black Cat early can be good. And if your board is set up for it, yeah, on 4.0 sometimes, and we even saw you buy a Black Cat, well into the game when you had a Queen of Hearts board. So it makes sense.
One very last stat that I've got for the day. There was a notable character that you purchased every single game. I don't think that was true of any other character. I could have missed, but there was definitely one character that you bought every single game. Do you know what that was?
It's Cindy.
I was going to let chat give a moment, but yeah, it's Cindy. You bought a Cinderella 5 times.
It's so good.
I went back through the stats and I was like, wait, how many Cinderella purchases? Wait, no, there were 5 of those. Got a Cindy every game.
It is one of my favorite units, yeah. It's a guaranteed treasure. I'm already casting spells, because I want to be doing that anyway. And, like, it's so good. It's the only quest unit that is outside of Lancelot if you buff it or whatever. But it's the only, like, guaranteed treasure that you can get in the game.
Well, thank you for playing the Storybook Brawl pop quiz with me today. These were the numbers that I collected.
Yeah, that was fun.
Man, what a run. What a tournament. It's just really awesome to sit back and watch. And it was really fun going back through all your games.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that as an outcome, Like, you go into it, and especially after the day one that was a roller coaster in and of itself, you can't really rely on anything. You can't assume anything. So it was great.
So
yeah, huge congratulations, Jebas, and thanks again for joining us today. It's a lot of fun going back through. We can watch the VODs ourselves, but to talk to you about what you were thinking and to reflect back on some of these decisions was a lot of fun for me personally. Hopefully, the people here watching also enjoyed that.
there was a question, Yuck, that you had asked when we were talking about the show. I'm kind of curious. What do you think about going to the Bahamas?
Yeah.
I don't really know. It, like, I'm not really an outdoors kind of person. I know that seems really surprising, being that I, play thousands of hours of video games on the internet, but I just like the sunshine, the beach, none of that really, that's not really that...
Let me phrase this differently. Let me ask this. I'll put you on the spot just a little bit. What's going to be the best part of the Bahamas? Is it going to be meeting everybody from the Storybook Brawl community? Is it going to be playing for the World Championship? Is it going to be just the competitive aspect of it, just more of that and doing it live in person? What are you looking forward to the most?
I don't even know, honestly. Like, I do like competing in big tournaments, and I think that's super, super fun. And, we're going to get to meet a lot of people that, are at the top of the game. And, there's going to be, it's going to be such a good time. I mean, I really can't wait. It's going to get here sooner than I think. Mobile will be there by then. So, I'll get to bring the iPad and just play SPB in the hotel room. That'll be nice. We get the nice view of the back of the curtains because they'll be closed to block out the sun.
Oh, I
Love it.
No, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a really good experience. I'm curious to see, kind of how they have the setup there, how they're going to do the coverage. Like, having gone to like big Magic the Gathering tournaments before, the Pro Tour, and knowing that a lot of the people that are, both making the game and also doing a lot of this stuff have some of the background in that. I imagine it'll be pretty similar to how some of those are run, but it should be a really good time.
Not to give away any secrets, but you got any special prep? You're gonna be eating some raw eggs these next couple of months? You're gonna be, what are you gonna?
Probably nothing. I mean, I may have to try and train myself to use the space bar instead of the bound buttons on the mouse, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to bring my mouse and have that set up on the whatever computers that they got down there. So that'll be kind of interesting. I'll certainly ask and see if I can bring it with, because I'm used to that now. I have two buttons on the side of the mouse that I just have bound to space and control for the roll and lock. So maybe that's my advantage that I've got. I will be playing a lot of SBB 99 between now and then. I think that's some of the best prep that you can do, for me anyway. And it's fun. It's good content.
Yuck, you got anything else you want to add?
No, that's basically it. Thanks for entertaining us and all of our questions, Jebas, and for joining us. Thanks everybody that's watching for hanging out with us today. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Yeah, I love doing these. It's always a good time. So anytime that you want to have me back for something, you just let me know.
I guess I do have one last thing I'm curious about. What charity were you playing for?
I was playing for Child's Play. I think that being able to use video games as an escape in any situation is awesome. I've been playing video games my whole life, and being able to get that into the hands of more people, especially children that might need them, I think is a great spot. And they've been doing it for so long that, it's always a good place to put money.
Yeah,
and for anybody that doesn't know, Good Luck Games and Storybook Brawl matches Jebas' winnings and all of the other players that finished in the top 8. Whatever they won monetarily, they got to choose a charity. Child's Play is what Jebas chose. They will donate a matching amount to that charity. So, for a great cause.
Yeah, really excellent. Well, then, I just want to say thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us today. Appreciate you, Jebas, coming in and spending the time with us. It was a lot of fun going through that last game and just going through everything. You just always have a lot of really good thoughts, of course, because you're really good at the game. And it's fun hearing it from an expert's perspective, from your perspective. Everybody, if you're not already in here, you can !cover in the chat. Join us in our Cover to Cover Discord. That'll get you updates on future events. We're doing community tournament every month. Spoilers, that might be a thing that's coming up again pretty soon. We got a special something planned for August this time around, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Definitely want to be updated on that. Just allow yourself to hear all the announcements, and that's really all I got for today.
Yeah, let's make sure everybody knows who we are, Horse Thief.
Oh, good point.
Obviously, Jebas, who is joining us, is a streamer. If you're not already following Jebas, make sure you do so. I'm sure our friend Keith in chat can probably give a shout out to Jebas. As well as Horse Thief, you and I both also stream. I'm Yuckmouth. If you don't already know, come by and say hi. Horse Thief Keith, help us out with those, please.
Yep. Horse Thief 3 or sometimes Horse Thief 8, depending on the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, thanks again, and that's us signing off. Have a great afternoon, evening, morning, wherever y'all may be.